Coming up today on the Locked On Hornets podcast, Jeff Peterson has comments after the trade. Nick Richards to Phoenix, Josh Okogie to Charlotte, and we'll preview the Hornets-Chicago game. Plus, how do we watch this game? How do we watch the rest of the season? We'll tell you. We'll give you a how-to guide today on LOH.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson. Find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, and I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Did you guys talk about the Nick Richards trade on Locked On NBA? Did you give all of your Hornets analysis there with Matt and Hayes?
Well, I couldn't give all of my Hornets analysis. That's what this show is for. I reserved this space to talk and interrupt you and talk as much as possible. On Locked On NBA, I have to be more deferential. I'm a point guard on Locked On NBA. Here, I'm Malik Monk, baby. I'm in the corner. DeMar DeRozan's looking for an ISO. I'm jumping up and down. Give me the ball. Give me the ball.
And look, unlike the Hornets, I won't trade you despite showing all these signs of talent. I'll keep you around. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. If you win your first bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Plus, Locked On Hornets, we got a newsletter. Doug's writing it, introducing the Locked On Hornets daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage, delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free right now. LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets newsletter. If you go to the newsletter, if you go to everyhornetsboxscore.com, or if you go to Locked On Hornets, we'll tell you all about Jeff Peterson and his comments after the trade, sending Nick Richards to Phoenix along with a second-round pick. They net 2 seconds. They get 3 overall, and they get Josh Okogie. And so where do you want to start with some of the comments from Jeff Peterson, the GM of the Hornets, I guess vice president of basketball ops to be specific, the head decision maker, if you will? Where do you want to start with some of these comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are 2 sets of comments. One on what happened or what might happen at the deadline mentality, and then he gave a couple of interesting comments on Okogie as well. So let's start with the deadline stuff because I think most people are interested in what he's going to do. And so he said this to the Charlotte Observer: "We are going to listen to everything. We are not going to do anything to compromise the future, but we are going to do what's best for the organization that we see going forward in order to be sustainable going forward. I have zero interest in making the playoffs for 1 year and then being out for the next 4 or 5 and then in for 2 and out again after that. So we want to, again, build something that has sustainability to it. We've got to continue to take advantage of deals like this that's adding picks to our treasure chest, if you will, or whatever it may be for us to have that optionality," unquote.
Doug, you know what I noticed about Jeff Peterson?
What did you notice?
That he's not all that different from Mitch Kupchak. Oh, I know that's going to hurt.
In words.
That's right. That's exactly right. So here's my point, right? So you hear him talk about not wanting to get to the postseason and then flame out, that you want to have stability in the postseason. You want to stay there, win a round, compete in the second round. If you get bounced, that means the next year you're going for a step further. That's what Mitch Kupchak said all the time. Jeff Peterson is echoing that sentiment here. Jeff Peterson loves to stockpile second-round picks. I saw T-Bone from WFNZ tweet this out. Who loves second-round picks more than Jeff Peterson? I almost sent a picture.
Second round.
I almost sent a picture of Mitch Kupchak in, saying, hey, you know what? Mitch Kupchak loved stockpiling second-round picks too. You know who liked to draft a bunch of like wide-ranging position players with a bunch of versatility? Mitch Kupchak. You know what Jeff Peterson's first selection was in the first round as head decision maker for the Hornets? It was Tijan Salan, with the idea that he can play a couple different positions and be long and wide-ranging and versatile and all that stuff. These two guys are very similar. Here's what I will tell you. You're right. They are similar in words. But what Jeff Peterson is doing that is very different than Mitch Kupchak is he's doing something, right? We do not need to take out the stick and then poke him every single offseason, every single trade deadline, and ask him to do something, please. Where Mitch Kupchak, he wakes up when he gets poked by the stick, and then he sends out cash considerations for Brad Wanamaker. Jeff is already awake, wheeling and dealing with a bunch of different teams, and that is the difference.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think we think that Mitch Kupchak is still around the building somewhere? He was never like officially fired, escorted out of the building. Steve Clifford's still hanging around. We've actually seen him. I don't know if we've seen physical evidence with him like holding a newspaper, Mitch Kupchak, that he's still in the building. But if he is, do you think that they put all those second rounders in a box or on like a tray and they just slide it under the door of his office? Like, here you go.
Yeah, I picture Mitch Kupchak shackled in some dungeon. Feed me. My precious second round pick. My second. Yes, please. That's what I picture Mitch Kupchak doing.
Yes, he is different in actions, and I think you can attribute that to a couple of things. I think there's an energy, a youth, a creativity, a vitality that is different. I think also you have an ownership group that is more invested in making these deals happen, giving you the freedom to make those deals. And we saw that before Jeff Peterson was hired. They were assisting Mitch Kupchak and wheeling and dealing at that last deadline before they fully took over. So, I mean, yes, the actions are different, and I think that's why you can be encouraged and not frustrated that the word sustainability is happening here, because I don't think sustainability means 5 to 10 years. I think it could mean like 2 to 3 to 4 seasons from now. That's where they're targeting, actually having a viable, like, contending product. Doesn't mean they're not going to make the playoffs in the next few seasons, but it means that they're working on this thing. And also we can pair with this Mark Stein's reporting in the Stein line that the front office is open and hearing offers for Nick Smith Jr., and that they're open to trading Josh Green, Cody Martin, and other players as they look to really figure out what this roster's going to look like, not just after the trade deadline, but after next season as well, or into next season.
Yeah, and so I guess Nick Smith Jr. would be the one I think that's most interesting. Josh Green, while I thought he was going to be a really nice fit, I think there have been times where he has been a real nice fit. Charles Lee still likes his defense. He talks pretty glowingly about Green's defense, but the offense, especially with just the rim finishing and lack thereof. Like if that's what you were brought in to do and the efficiency has just plummeted, the 3-point shooting actually isn't bad. It's just zero volume for him, right? Like you're just not getting enough shots up from Green. The corner three, it still works. You're just not kicking it out to him enough. And that's not a LaMelo complaint. That's just like a Josh's role not being all that much in the offense type of criticism. But just not finishing at the rim, that's a big deal. All that to say, it's made Green expendable, where I thought that he was going to be a big help. Charles Lee also talked glowingly about Green in training camp, right? How he's just a perfect puzzle piece. He fits in so well. What can't this guy do in terms of what we ask him to do? Well, yeah, like it's not been a beautiful symphony with him out there on the court. It's been, hit or miss. There are some games where you can really tell that he's providing an impact, and then offensively, he's been real absent, like Olympic style absent. So there was some foreshadowing with his Olympic performance.
But so Nick Smith Jr., what do you think about him being available in discussions?
Yeah, he's the more interesting one for sure, because I saw Jake Fisher bring this up. Oh, is it time? Do we need to bring the tackle box?
Oh, yeah, he joined the Stein line. Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, we got a big one.
Okay. God almighty. Yes, it's been a while. You haven't taken me fishing, Pop. It's been so long. Yes. Nick Smith Jr. mentioned by Jake Fisher. The interesting part here is he mentioned that Nick Smith Jr. was a Mitch Kupchak draft pick, and he wasn't Jeff Peterson Schlotkin draft pick, and that's why maybe he could be on the trade block. I don't think that this regime would just be reckless enough to say he's not our guy, we're shipping him out. I don't believe that. I do think it leaves him more expendable, because it's not them, I guess, technically, who invested a first-round selection in NSJ. They did invest a lot in him in Summer League. They asked him to do a whole bunch. They gave him all the responsibility and then some, offensively and defensively. They have talked very highly about Nick Smith Jr., but if they feel like they can get something in return because another franchise is tantalized by his offensive talent, then it looks like because he wasn't a Peterson draft pick, then maybe he would be more expendable, like Jake Fisher said.
Yeah, I don't think we should underrate that. And I put that in my analysis on the Sicko Brigade when I sent this news out. Join subtext.com/Lockdown Hornets, by the way. Get your free trial, sign up, and get depraved Hornets thoughts from me via text. But that was my big question coming out of this deal is like, it's super easy to trade a player that you don't have any investment in, that you didn't draft. So the big question moving forward for Peterson and company is, are they going to be brave enough to move on from players that they drafted? Because that was, I mean, that's sort of when you look back at the Bob Bass era, that's one thing that you kind of credit Bass with is like he was not afraid to move on from like super talented players and players that he drafted if it meant that it was going to be an upgrade for the roster overall. And some of those bets paid off in a big way. And sometimes his hand was forced, but other times it was just him understanding like timing on this stuff is everything. And if you wait too long on guys, you lose that window to move them when they're most valuable. And I think that's the big ding on Mitch Kupchak as well. So NSJ, the thing with him is I just think his development is happening too slowly. Like stuff is happening, stuff is developing. He's become a slightly better passer as he's been here. The shooting has kind of been on and off, but like his fit on this particular version of the roster, I don't know if it's super solid, particularly if they want to have a long-term future with Trey Mann.
Right.
So I just think, yeah, he's vulnerable right now.
A couple things. One, I contend that if we're talking local 30 for 30s, I would absolutely love a 30 for 30 on Bob Bass. His entire career in Charlotte, I think every single chapter would be interesting. Yeah. The other thing is, if we're going to trade Josh Green, do you need more than what you gave up to get him, or does it really matter? Because what they gave up to get him, you look at a report July 6th, just to be specific, Hornets, Jeff Peterson, they traded for Josh Green, Reggie Jackson, and 2029 and 2030 second-round picks via Denver in a 6-team trade. Charlotte sends a 2025 second-round pick via Philadelphia and cash to Denver. So you're talking about just one second-round pick and some cash. Feels like you could get a second-round pick in return, right? Like, and even if so, doesn't feel like the return would be all that different than what you sent out.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if that's going to be moving Josh Green to a team that wants Josh Green and more like Josh Green, Cody Martin, Vasa Micic, and Nick Smith. Nick Smith Jr. is the one guy I think you could move to another team as a part of the trade that's like, ooh, that team wants a young player that they think they can develop. But I put Josh Green and Cody Martin and Vasa Micic in this bucket of players that the Hornets could use contract-wise to help facilitate a deal, and then maybe you bring back a second-rounder or a package of second-rounders for whatever you come away with. Because, I mean, you know, points per shot attempt for Josh Green way down, usage way down, assist percentage way down. Like, I don't know. I mean, there's just not much there. And I think what's interesting, too, you mentioned his rim finishing. That's like one thing that Josh Okogie does actually pretty well is finish at the rim.
Well,
so,
I mean, Okogie, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm wrong on this. I thought Okogie shot a lot at the rim and he wasn't very good at it. That's what I thought Okogie was doing. And Green was someone that was very good at it, except didn't do it a lot. Now it's kind of flipping on its head here. So we'll see what exactly takes place. But you need some rim finishing.
65% from the field. And this is what's weird on Clean the Glass is they switched him from a wing to a forward. I think that'd be pretty good percentage for a wing. It's bad percentage if you classify him as a forward.
Right.
I think that's sometimes where things on Clean the Glass get weird. But like 65% at the rim, not stellar, but not bad if you're just talking about like a shooting guard.
Yeah, and it's maybe on this team, it's actually pretty good, you know, because this team desperately needs it. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
The game within the game. How to watch the Charlotte Hornets the rest of the way. We tell you. Coming up next, Locked On Hornets. Before we get to the last segment, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. to receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year. From first match, must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC. As of November 18th, 2024, Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. More Locked On Hornets ahead. I've done this quite a bit on Wesson Walker in just a different way. I have framed the question, what are the goals of this Hornets team? After that 2-week stretch where the Hornets kept losing and losing and then losing again, we started to shift how we talk about Charlotte in 2024-2025. What should the goals be of this team? It's essentially, how should we watch this squad? There's a how-to guide that we're coming up with right now. Doug, this is something that you played with yesterday. How should we watch the Hornets the rest of the season?
Yeah, I think the game within the game is to watch the starting unit. And maybe now you can throw in, if they're going to experiment with Josh Okogie, like see his fit with certain guys, see his fit with LaMelo Ball if he's playing in that bench unit with them, or Brandon Miller, see how those guys interact. But I would just look at the starting unit and the 4 players. I'm not going to call them what you think I'm going to call them, but the 4 players that the Hornets are most likely to move on into next season with, which is LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, and Mark Williams. Now, I would also say maybe also just look at LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, and Mark Williams and see how those guys interact, because I don't know what the long-term future for Miles Bridges is. But I would just focus on that starting unit, see how they play together, look at their plus minuses, look at what the lineups do, and that's how you watch the games, because when they break the lineup, that's when teams are going to, decent teams and sometimes even bad teams, as we saw the Utah Jazz do the other night, they're going to break the Hornets over their back because this bench unit does not offer anything in terms of functional offense, passing, shooting, that is going to be a threat at all. So I think that's how you watch the game at this point.
Yeah, I think if we're looking at the game within the game, trends that we want to see the Hornets improve, trends that we want to see continue, whatever, right? I think one thing that I'm looking at first and foremost, the LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller 2-man game. How does the team look with both of those guys on the floor at the same time? If everything surrounds those two hitting, if you have this all NBA certain all-star talent in LaMelo, if you have this hopeful all-star talent in Brandon Miller but isn't all-star yet, then your future is wrapped up in those guys. As we joke about the Core Four and some of the other nicknames that are running rampant despite us not wanting to use them, the argument is you really have 2 guys that this team would like to build around in LaMelo and Brandon. So it would be nice if the 2 pillars of this organization play really well with one another. So Brandon Miller right now with LaMelo on the floor is averaging 17 points a game throughout his career. You can change that a little bit with what's happening this season, but we know that the efficiency is down for Brandon, that he hasn't had as good of a season his sophomore campaign as he did his rookie campaign. I think the biggest difference in this type of sample size has been LaMelo playing basketball, because LaMelo is going to have the basketball in his hands almost as much as anybody in the NBA. Like, we're talking Luka levels, we're talking getting more field goal attempts up than anybody levels. I mean, it's crazy. I don't think people understand just how much LaMelo is shooting the basketball and handling the basketball. So how do those 2 guys coexist at their height? How does Brandon reach all-star level with LaMelo on the floor, and how does LaMelo reach All-NBA with Brandon on the floor? I actually think it's easier for LaMelo. I just wonder how Brandon is going to adapt. And he needs to, right? Like, this is the question. This is the thing for him. He needs to, but I want to see the 2-man game continue to improve and really flourish.
That's what makes it so difficult to evaluate LaMelo's performance this year, because we've seen so much about like how many shots he's taking per minute and how inefficient he is. And maybe I'll run the data on what that looks like when he's playing with a starting unit that is healthy starting unit, like for the next, maybe run it after they get, I think they have like 4 or 5 games under their belt now, like run it after they get 5 or more games, let's get a 10 or 15 game sample with LaMelo in the starting lineup. Let's see what his shots per minute are with the starting unit. Let's see what his efficiency is with the starting unit. Because I think I've seen multiple instances where he's been playing in lineups with Tijon Salon and Nick Smith Jr. and some other bench players, and he just has this look on his face like, what do you want me to do? I pass it, the ball goes nowhere, fine, I'm just going to shoot it. And I think that's what's really wrecking some of the efficiency numbers, and yet he still manages 7.5 assists per game. So I don't know what Howard Beck or Matt, my co-host on Locked On NBA, Matt Moore, and some of these other guys like Tom Ziller, I don't know what they want LaMelo to do at this point. And that's nothing that I haven't said to Matt, so he knows. Him and I have had many arguments off air about LaMelo Ball. But like, I don't know what people want him to do. So that's what I'm saying is like, let's, I know people want to care about the result. I want to care about the result. I want to see the Hornets win. I want to see the bench go off occasionally. That's fun. It's fun to win. But I just think you have to understand what the priorities of this organization are right now. And it's not necessarily, getting a win against Chicago tonight. It's about, let's see what this starting unit can look like together.
If that two-man game is the first bullet point, I think the second bullet point is the guy that you could argue is a part of a core three or whatever alliteration you want to come with is Mark Williams. So when you watch Mark Williams, one, what kind of almost full, close to a full season's worth of basketball in his third year, what does that look like offensively and defensively? I know you've talked about the lack of physicality from Mark Williams, so that's something that he brought against Walker Kessler. Can he bring it on a more consistent basis?
Yeah, he's not incapable of it. That's the point, right? He's not incapable of, I've never called him not a physical player. I just think that he doesn't bring the physicality consistently enough, particularly against matchups where the other center has a little bit more muscle than he does.
Yeah, and I think we probably disagree on like the importance of Mark, but I don't think we disagree there. Like I'm with you, the consistency with how much he plays physically. I totally agree with that. And we saw it against the Jazz. I think against Chicago, the man was running around crazy, right? Like we see these games where he just goes nuts. What's the floor? Like what's something you can rely on from Mark every time you take an NBA court? I think seeing that, I almost, Doug, I don't know, man. I almost think that having Mark on the floor right now, you can go ahead and rely on this team just being better both offensively and defensively, which means you're just better with Mark on the floor. And I know that there are times where he leaves us frustrated because we could reach a higher ceiling with Mark bringing more consistency, but there's too many advanced metrics. There's just the eye test too. Just put him in the paint and then watch other people react to him being in the paint. They have to put a little extra arc on their shot. Mark sometimes rotates late, but just Mark being on the floor for this team, better basketball team. LaMelo finds more assists with split passes. So what's the consistency there with Mark? I'm hoping we see a real uptick in that for Mark in his third year, and he played 35 minutes against Utah. So great start to the rest of the season.
And played 30 minutes against Phoenix, and in both of those games got to the line for 10 free throw attempts. He was 7 of 10 against Utah, 6 of 10 against Phoenix. That's double any output that he's had so far this season. And again, he's stacking more minutes than he was early on. He was on a restriction. So that's positive to see as well. You mentioned the Chicago game. They play Chicago tonight. And in that last game, he had 20 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists on 9 of 9 shooting. Good for a 222 points per shot attempt.
And he gave us a cornerback seatbelt celebration after altering Vucevic's shot at the end of regulation. So
watch out,
lost.
Vuce.
Yeah, they lost in overtime, but he locked him down on the perimeter in a game crunch time type of scenario. So maybe we give you some more ways to watch the Charlotte Hornets coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Not only do we tell you how you should watch the Hornets the rest of the year, but it starts with this game against Chicago. So we'll give you a preview there coming up next, last segment. This episode is brought to you by Skims. When you find out about Skims and Skims making underwear for men, I know I was intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from friends, family, so I had to give it a try. Let me tell you, Skims lives up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear, fit, comfort, finding the right style for myself. Skims can change all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. You can shop Skims men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and Skims stores. Let them know we sent you too. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Again, shop Skims men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and Skims stores. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300. Man, this number keeps going up. $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app, it's easy to use, it's easy to navigate. The variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More Locked On Hornets ahead. I did want to talk about the subplots of the season. So if the main plot is LaMelo, Brandon, Mark, what are some of the subplots? Tijon has to be here somewhere, right? As a first-round pick, 6th overall. How do we watch Tijon Salon the rest of the way, Doug?
With bated breath, with clenched.
You know what? Yeah.
Because I think early in the season, a lot of teams are figuring a lot of things out, and I think his energy and intensity, he was able to get to some spots and knock down some shots, particularly when teams had no idea what he was or who he was. And I think you're seeing something that happens to a lot of rookies, not even just like prospects. I mean, we saw it happen to Brandon Miller last season. Is defenses adjust, scouting reports catch up, and the intensity of the game increases as the season goes on, and the game can start to get away from young players. And I think that's what you're seeing with Tijon Salon. And as the bench unit gets worse, I think that's also going to hurt his ability to get the ball where he wants and how he wants it. And so, I think it's been difficult for Tijon. And so, I think you've just got to give him a lot of space, give him a lot of patience, be patient with him, because his developments are not going to happen. His big developments are going to happen in the offseason going into next season.
Yeah, I mean, I think another subplot, too, if we're talking rookies, would be if there really is a lot of change off the bench, and Cody Martin and Vasa Micic, they're both gone, and Trey Mann battles injuries the rest of the way through. KJ Simpson, it's your time to shine. KJ is the name that is not mentioned, either playing a lot right now or a part of the trade block like Nick Smith Jr. is being thrown out there when we're going fishing. So KJ Simpson, just by really process of elimination, KJ might be thrust into a position where he's getting a lot of minutes. And you know what? Love me some KJ Simpson with what he's shown. Yeah, clearly it's going to be a downgrade with a lot of other NBA guards, but that guy's a bulldog. That guy fights. It fits the Hornets' DNA, which Jeff Peterson also talked about when they acquired Josh Okogie. We know they have a type. If you give a bleep and you give more of a bleep than anybody else, then they're going to like having you. They're going to want to trade for you. And that's why they drafted KJ Simpson, who's crying, saying, I'm ready to run through a brick wall right now, as soon as he was the second-round pick. You see it in his game. Last thing for me, Doug, just other bench players. So Grant Williams, Trey Mann, both out with injury. Grant's out for the rest of the season. Trey Mann, he's hopefully going to come back at some point. We're past the 2-week evaluation process. Still not out there.
Well past that. It's like a 2-month evaluation process.
So who knows when Trey Mann's coming back. But another question would be, is there a bench player that shows up to the point where you would like to see this thing through next year? Who is that guy? Because right now, Doug, there's not one single player coming off of the bench outside of Salon, because he's a first-round pick, having only played 40 games so far in his career. There's not a bench player that you are like hell-bent on keeping in 2025, 2026. I'll have nice words to say about Cody if and when he's traded, but I can't tell you that the Hornets need to hold on to him. Vasa will always have April. The first 2 weeks of April will always have that, Micic. Who's that guy? So really it's just...
Is it Musa?
Yeah, that's a great point. Is it Musa? Because now there seems to be an opportunity with no big man depth. So those are some.
I mean,
subplots.
Trey Mann and Grant Williams. That is your bench.
That's
like
your bench.
even if you take away the Josh Green impact, the Cody Martin impact, like those are going to be toppings on the cake. But like the cake was Trey Mann's offense that we saw in the preseason and early in this season, and then Grant Williams, what we've seen from him since he's been here. Like that was the bench, and both of those guys getting ripped out really, there were injuries to the starting lineup too, but I mean, I think those two injuries really ripped the heart out of the Charlotte Hornets. Any idea of them overperforming this season went out the window when those two guys left.
Ooh, now while the Hornets tank, it doesn't mean sometimes that it can't be fun, and so you know what this might look like when Trey Mann comes back and either Cody, Vasa, Josh Green, they're traded. Guess what the starting lineup might look like? LaMelo, Trey, Brandon, Miles, and Mark.
That's a sicko. That's a sicko lineup.
That is a sicko lineup for sure. All right, let's preview this game. What you got for Charlotte, Chicago tonight?
Well, the Hornets don't typically play well against Chicago. Chicago, if you're disappointed at where the Hornets are as a franchise, just be happy that you're not in the place that Chicago is, afraid to make a deal, afraid to make any deal, stuck in limbo. They've got good players, but they don't know what to do with any of them in terms of whether to keep them long-term or trade them. Levine's been on the market forever. He's having... I don't know if it's a career year, but he's having a great year. Vooch is playing well too.
Yes, he is.
But they have depth issues as well. The Hornets are only a 4-point dog in this game, and the Bulls are dealing with some injuries as well. So, I mean, I would say this is winnable, but the Charlotte Hornets, for some reason, even at full strength, seem to wilt when they play Chicago. So this is going to be a difficult one, particularly when you look at the fact that you had all four of the main Hornets pieces here score 20+ against Utah, against a depleted Utah team, and struggle to win that game. So I don't know that it's going to be a winner here.
Yeah, well, look, let's go right back to Mark Williams. 9 of 9, the first matchup they had, or the last one. It goes to overtime. Bulls, it just hit a bunch of shots in OT. That game was pretty over pretty quickly once we got to overtime. So this is a game where Mark should be the more physical player. This is a game where Mark should grab a bunch of rebounds. Vucevic only grabs just over 2 offensive rebounds per game. So let's keep him to that. If Vooch grabs only 2 offensive rebounds, that's a win. Just limit him there and have Mark continue to crash the offensive glass as he's done such a good job at throughout his career. Same thing. I would love to see 12, 13 boards. Let's keep climbing that ladder. Let's see if you can just have a monster game again.
How about 7
Chicago.
In the fourth quarter again? I'll take 7 offensive rebounds in the fourth quarter. Come on. We're talking consistency here, Mark. Let's go.
Let's just keep setting records. That's what I would love to see. But yeah, clearly big Mark game, and you'd like to see LaMelo get back on track with the 3 ball. I'd love to see like a 50% 3 game, 6 of 12, maybe something like that. Would love to see that mark go up for Melo to, keep the haters at bay from distance, because the shot it's not been there here lately.
I don't know if we're going to see Okogie in this game, but that would be something fascinating to watch. I don't know if we've gotten confirmation. By the way, we did get confirmation on when this Lakers game and this Clippers game is going to be played, the ones that got rescheduled due to the wildfires out in L.A. The Hornets will play the Lakers on February 19th. The Hornets will play the Clippers on March 16th. So there are your rescheduled dates. Also, I looked up what Okogie's rim percentage would be if he were classified as a wing like he was classified last season by Cleaning the Glass, and it would put him at about average. But that's well above Josh Green, who is like one of the worst at the rim in the league as a wing. And it would put him above Miles Bridges, who has not been finishing well at the rim this season either. It would put him below Cody Martin, who is actually having a pretty good year at the rim, although I'm not sure what the volume is for Cody Martin.
Cody's been fine in his role. Like Cody's not a player that I'm begging to get off of, right? Like it's honestly, when we're talking about the bench players, Cody's been better than all of them, just not consistent from 3. Right. But again,
on a team that is I think he's 32% from three, right? 24th percentile for a wing. Like, that's not good, but he's in a sea of players who are like that. It's not like he's standing out.
Yeah. Last question, just because you bring up the point. So by the way, Josh Green, like hitting at the basket, getting in the restricted area and finishing, really good at it in his role in Dallas. This was one of the benefits of trading for him. He was really, really good. Now, again, low volume, crazy spacing with guys like Kyrie and Luka handling the rock, and you got to make sure you're covering them on the perimeter. So all that, fair enough. Is this system just going to plummet Okogie's or any driver of the basketball's percentages too? Or is this a Josh Green thing? I guess that's the question that you might have. Green has probably earned a little benefit of the doubt in that regard, Doug. Like, if you have a system that gives Green enough spacing, every year, really, he's been in the league, he's been good at this stat until he gets to the Hornets and then it plummets, right? Like, it sucks, but maybe that's why he's expendable now.
Well, yeah, and how much of him being available in these reports is about his individual performance this season and more about the Hornets just needing to reshuffle in general and him being an available piece to facilitate that happening, right? It's not like, oh, we got to move on from Josh Green. Right. It's more about like, oh, yeah, this thing isn't working. We need to just evaluate all options. What did we hear from Jeff Peterson? Optionality. Mm-hmm. I would not be surprised if Josh Green's name showed up in a trade involving the Charlotte Hornets at the deadline. I would also not be surprised if he's playing for the Charlotte Hornets next season. I think this is the one piece of analysis I gave on the Charlotte Hornets on Locked On NBA, is that this trade for Nick Richards signals, for me, that the Charlotte Hornets are open for business. And apart from Mark Williams, LaMelo Ball, and Brandon Miller, everyone on this team is available to move.
Man, the idea of Josh Green is fantastic for this team. It's fantastic, right? Like, even the accuracy from three is actually good. It's just, yeah, God, if you can fix that, then I do think he'd be somebody worth having next year. But it's the idea more so than the actual player right now. All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your pods. That includes YouTube. Go check out Locked On NBA. Doug hosted along with Matt Moore, Hayes as well. I always call Hayes just Hayes. It feels like a one-name type of dude. What's his last name? So it's just we call him Hayes and Matt Moore. That's what we.
I don't know. We don't talk about anything but basketball. We don't get. I don't know if they have kids. I don't know what their favorite movies are. We get on. We talk basketball. Then we get out of there.
You gave me a panicked look. It's like, I don't know. Don't ask me. Please go away. Anyways, Hayes, as we call him, and Matt Moore. Locked On NBA. Also check out everyhornetsboxscore.com. There you can find Doug's subtext information too. I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great weekend. Hopefully you have a great Chicago-Charlotte viewing experience, and we'll talk all about it on Monday.
I barely know your last name.